I think I prefer comedy,
Okay.
but I'm much more drawn to drama. Like I do have way more fun when I'm doing a comedy. In the drama, I still go back to the old, the stuff I grew up learning, the old method kind of stuff. And method is much maligned. It is not imagining, a lemon or a helicopter or whatever. It's just about being really present all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm guilty of not leaving it at work sometimes.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. My name is Scott Mantz. I'll be moderating this conversation. Without further ado, the new series is called Florida Man. It is streaming on Netflix. And joining us for this conversation is Emmy winner Anthony LaPaglia. Anthony, welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So the first question is kind of an obvious one, Anthony, but what was it about Florida Man that made you go, yep, I'm going to do this. It's my next series.
They asked me. No, after they asked me, I looked at it, I read it. And Donald Todd, who's the writer, executive producer, is a really good writer. And I just thought it was, I knew the whole Florida Man concept just from watching the news. And and I just really, Donald's writing is it's a black comedy. So, I mean, I thought it was funny. I particularly thought that the relationship between me and Edgar Ramirez I play his father. And yes, I've reached that point in my life where I'm playing Edgar Ramirez's father. And they don't like each other. And I thought that relationship was written so well. And the character of Sonny is not a particularly nice person. And has a particularly gruff manner, which I've just naturally grown into as I get older. So I really related to it, and just the people involved were doing it. Everyone that was doing it, I liked, and as an overall package, I just thought, yes, this is great. This will be fun, and it was fun.
Yeah, I really like the tone, the vibe of it. It's funny, like you said, it's a dark comedy. So I laughed out loud quite a few times. And I loved the relationship between Sonny Valentine and Mike Valentine. How would you describe the relationship between your character, you're the father, to Edgar Ramirez's character in the show?
Dysfunctional. Basically, Edgar's character, Mike, despises his father for something we don't find out about for quite a while. But obviously, Sonny has done something, and they really haven't had much contact with each other for a number of years. But suddenly, Mike and I'm a retired police chief. And, and I kind of retired with all the bells and whistles, and even though I was a crooked cop, and all that kind of stuff. And so he finds himself in Florida because he has been kicked off the force, and he's trying to get all the evidence he needs to prove why it was a setup. And at a certain point, just because of the microcosm of the environment that he's in, all roads lead back to Sonny. And Sonny's actually kind of thrilled about it because he sees another opportunity to torture him some more.
Yeah, sure.
and but there's a bigger thing happening that Sonny needs help with, and he could do with Mike's expertise to help him with, which of course Mike wants nothing to do with. And the relationship kind of grows from there.
So what were the conversations you initially had with Edgar, when you first got together, maybe for a table read or just like chemistry read or whatever?
Well, first he told me,
yeah,
I'm very, very famous in Venezuela. It's different. And I said, yeah, probably here too. And we got on like a house on fire. He's the sweetest, nicest man. And we just kind of built on, we thought it might be a problem that we actually kind of liked each other in real life, but it helped us kind of like talk through. I like collaborating, but I also like to collaborate in a way that the other actor wants to collaborate. Some actors don't want to collaborate at all. Some actors have their own specific way of collaborating, but I found Edgar to be very open and very collaborative. And so we didn't have to say a lot about it, actually.
Oh,
because once we started doing it, it seemed to click.
Oh, that's great. That's great. When it clicks, like that's magic.
It is.
In terms of your approach to playing Sonny, like what were your points of connection? You said you kind of related a little bit. Talk about your approach to playing him, because yeah.
Right. Well, first of all, I have a kind of subversive sense of humor to start with. And I just liked how threatening he was without being directly threatening. I liked that he kind of knows from the beginning that Mike, even though he wants nothing to do with Sonny, he knows that eventually he's going to have to come to me. I know he's going to have to come to me. And I think he knows it too, but he tries to resist it. So I kind of like that interplay of, it wouldn't take much. I wouldn't have to say much to get the character of Mike upset. And where Sonny really gets drawn into any kind of drama. He seems to be very on top of it.
When you look back on some of the other series that you did, whether it's Murder One or Without a Trace, what were some of the unique challenges with Florida Man that you didn't have on those other two shows that you did have on this one?
Oh, I found it to be the opposite. I had unique challenges doing network drama, whereas I experienced a lot of freedom doing this format, working for Netflix. There wasn't a lot of oversight. They hired us and they trusted us that we would deliver what they wanted. And so, outside of the normal kind of collaboration you would have with the director and the writer, they were very comfortable with us trying it and experimenting with it, and trusting. We kind of knew when it didn't work. We actually didn't often have to be told, because I think, look, if you're really involved in a scene and you're really engaged with the person you're working with, if it's working or not. You don't need anybody to tell you. I don't think so, in my experience. And I found that incredibly liberating, that I wasn't getting notes that I said "the" in the wrong place or "but" in the wrong place, or it really didn't matter as long as the crux of the scene was there. As long as there's a certain structure around a scene. Look at it like a box, and the dialogue is inside the box. And I found with network television, as good an experience as I had with it, I did find it frustrating that the structure of the box was also inside the box. And this one, you have the structure of the box, but then you can go crazy inside the box, as long as you keep the general thrust and the theme of the scene going. And so that I really enjoyed that kind of freedom within there, that they trusted your instincts as an actor to, we didn't like, rewrite scenes or anything, but we were allowed to kind of like take it off, add, subtract, and let it take its own course.
That must have been so fun. I mean, you said it was liberating, but it must have been fun for you and Edgar to.
Completely liberating to get to work like that.
Wow.
I've always kind of, always found it interesting that in certain, not always, but in certain circumstances, you get hired as an actor because they like what you do.
Yeah.
That's the reason they hire you. Well, me anyway. I don't get hired for my looks. So so I'm always a bit mystified that once they've done that, then there's this kind of form of micromanagement that can happen within the box.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you get control of the box, but once I'm in the box, that's what you paid me for.
Right.
To create something in there that's not only on the page, but hopefully beyond what's on the page.
When I was like I guess not even into the second episode, I was still in the first episode. And I was just really taking in the tone of the show, because like it's dark comedy, but I mean, it's in Florida, so it's a very, very bright and sunny Sunshine State. So with the freedom that you and Edgar had, but also maintaining the tone, what was how did your collaboration with Donald Todd work to maintain the tone so you didn't go too far off in one direction or too far off in another direction because you had freedom?
Donald is super generous, and super trusting of your instincts. Occasionally he would come over and say, well, what about this or what about that? And I'm always happy to try it, whatever they would like to try. And to his credit, sometimes after we tried it the way he wanted to see it, he would just go back to what you were doing. Donald's a very generous, collaborative guy, and I really enjoyed working with him.
What were some of the things that you had to sort of learn how to do for this show that you'd never done before? I think you know what I'm getting at. Oh,
yeah, scuba diving. I'm Italian. We don't scuba dive. I'd never been scuba diving in my life. And there were these big scuba diving sequences. And they said to me, oh, it's okay. All you have to do is, get in the water in a wetsuit, and we'll use a double for all the underwater. They built this gigantic tank. I mean, it was massive, like I just know that it fit a truck and a full-size truck and a car in it. And it was a massive diving tank. And I said, I didn't come all this way to have a double do my stuff. I'm doing it. So they said, I said, I'm going to get scuba lessons. And they said, great. We'll take care of it. And so they lined me up with a guy here in LA, and I took lessons for about 3 weeks. And when it came to shoot it, it was the most fun I ever had.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's really awesome. Where exactly did you film, and for how long?
Wilmington, North Carolina. Probably 3 months.
So you weren't even in Florida.
No. Don't tell it. Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody.
But it's remarkable, like, especially the beach areas, the coastal areas. It's not dissimilar to Florida. The weather is not dissimilar to Florida sometimes, quite humid at times. But yeah, we shot it all in Wilmington, North Carolina.
No kidding. Wow. When with all the films that you had done, when you got to really the first chance that you had to do a character over the course of a season in Murder One, what was that like the first time you got to do an arc of a character, not over an episode or over a movie, but over a season?
Well, to be honest, I'd never done a TV series before on Murder One. And at that time, I was predominantly doing theater in New York. And I got set up with a meeting with the late and great Stephen Bochco. Came to New York to see me. And we had dinner. And my agent said, "God, the least you can do is hear him out." Because I was like thinking, I don't really want to do it. And I met Stephen, and he was very persuasive. And also his other TV shows were, at the time, different from everything else that was on the air.
Yeah.
And after that conversation, I also have to understand at that time, I'd only really been doing theater and movies. And there was a kind of snobbery, especially in theater a little bit, about doing TV. And I ended up saying yes. And a few of my colleagues were a little disappointed in me for doing that. But it was just a medium I hadn't tried. And I liked that there was a continuity of story. It was like doing a movie, but just over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
But, it was baptism by fire. I didn't realize how fast television was, how quickly you had to learn and perform, and how often they rewrite in the middle of a scene. And then you're trying to, incorporate that. And I was used to having a more leisurely approach, like 4 or 5 week rehearsal, and so I suddenly got slammed into that. And I'd be lying if I say I didn't struggle for the first episode.
Wow.
But the rest of the cast were extremely, generous actors, and Stephen was particularly good, and the producers were also very supportive. And so once I got the hang of it, I was able to get into the rhythm of it more. I adapted to it and got used to, learning and there was no rehearsal, rarely, but learning and how to, have them do a take and go, right, we got it, we're moving on. With me going, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not good till the third take.
Wow.
So there was a lot of that going on, but it was very challenging, and it was really good writing. It tested me on a number of levels, but it prepared me for later.
Sure. Yeah, that was my next question, Anthony, was, after that baptism by fire that you had on Murder One, and when it came to Without a Trace, that which you were on for many years, what did you bring with you, and how did Murder One prepare you for, okay, this is not just one season, or 2 seasons, this is many seasons?
Well, I was really not going to do it. And then my ex-wife got pregnant.
Oh.
And that made the decision for me that I wanted to be in the same place, live in the same city, not be flying off to do movies or whatever. and I wanted to be present for my daughter. I mean, I wasn't because I don't remember the schedule being that brutal on Murder One, but on Without a Trace, I was prepared, but the time we'd quite regularly put in 13-hour days or sometimes 14. And we were only ever just ahead of the curve, just. But it did allow me to go home and spend time with my family then. So I made that choice. And it was, it was an interesting idea to me.
Sure.
I liked the idea. One of the things was, sorry, I've been suffering from some kind of pox this week. I don't know what. So I had to learn another skill set, which was a couple of things. It was really staying on top of the scripts. They were constantly being rewritten. And sometimes they were rewritten so much that they started to get away from how good they were in the beginning. You have 10 writers in a room, and you have, and there was a lot more oversight Without a Trace. And so I had to learn several things, how to navigate that territory, how to stick to my guns if I thought something was better or right. Mm-hmm. It's a different discipline. Network television is a whole different discipline. And, once again, I had a great cast, and a great crew who made working there every day really worth it. The cast, particularly, I forged an unholy alliance with Enrique Murciano, and he had a tendency to kind of, get himself in trouble. So I laughed a lot. I laughed a lot when we were working. But also sometimes I'd find myself, sometimes we were only just barely a script ahead. And so sometimes I'll be in the middle of a scene and I'll be working on next week's episode. I'll be in the middle of a scene and they'd say cut. And I noticed myself turning around, automatically saying to the writer, so like the scene in the next episode with blah, 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 I think maybe we should look at this, this, and that. And I realized that my acting had gone onto autopilot.
Yeah, sure.
I was able to switch out of doing that character and turn around and talk about let's problem solve the next thing. Mm-hmm. There was a lot more multitasking going on there. I'm sure they would say they would have preferred if I hadn't been multitasking, but I was really kind of, I think we managed to maintain a decent quality for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I was proud of the consistency of the show, but it took a lot of work from a lot of people.
I mean, it looks like it. I mean, it certainly looks like it paid off in that way, but going from, let's say you're doing drama and then you go do comedy on Frasier and win an Emmy for it. Which do you like better? Which do you find more rewarding for you to do, drama or comedy, and why?
It's funny because I think I prefer comedy.
Okay.
But I'm much more drawn to drama. Like I do have way more fun when I'm doing a comedy. In the drama, I still go back to the old, the stuff I grew up learning, the old method kind of stuff. And method is much maligned. It is not imagining, a lemon or a helicopter or whatever. It's just about being really present all the time. And I think I'm guilty of not leaving it at work sometimes.
I remember you doing comedy before I started seeing you do drama. I
Thank
think
you. Yes.
one of the
Most people
first
don't
things I
realize
saw
that.
you do was Stevie D from Betsy's Wedding.
Yeah, I mean that's the interesting thing. That's where I started, was in comedy. I don't know how I got drawn into drama. It might have been View from the Bridge, maybe. Yeah, but maybe after that, I think people look every I don't know how many years, people's perception of you changes.
Sure.
You get older, and it's whatever they saw you do last. And then you get, I never listen. Actors complain about getting pigeonholed. I never complained about that. If I was working, that's not being pigeonholed. You can make me play a mafia guy 50 times. I'm all right. I'll find a different way to play them. They're not all the same.
What made you want to be an actor in the first place? Like, when did you sort of go, that's it, that's what I want to do?
It took a long time, actually. Originally, I was from the time I was 14, I had been a professional soccer. I had been signed on by a professional soccer team as a young player for development, and then went through the development system and ended up playing professionally for maybe about 4 or 5 years, not that long. And I came to a certain realization that I was never going to be as good as I wanted to be. And so I decided to get out. And if I couldn't go where I wanted to go, then I didn't see any point in continuing it. But I didn't have anything else to go to. And so there was a period of time where I was floating around for a little bit. And I was actually a shoe salesman at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I went on a date with the girl who worked next door at a women's dress shop. And she took me to see a play. And I'd never seen a play in my life. And I still remember Way of the World, a William Congreve play. And I was just blown away by the play. And I sat in the play watching what was going on stage, but also turning around and looking at the audience react. And that connection was like, wow, they do that and they do that. And there was something about the connection between what was going on up there and what was going on down there in the audience that really captivated me. And so I came out of that play going, wow, boy, I'd really like to do that. But at the time I was about 20, I think. And that girl who I started dating, she said, you should do it. And I'm like, I don't even know how. I don't know how you even start. But over time, I figured it out. I figured out, number one, I have to learn how to act. So I went to acting schools. I also figured out that if I stayed in Australia, I wasn't going to get anywhere. And that where the real action was in the States. So I packed up my stuff, my little suitcase, and I moved to the United States in about 1982. And I landed in New York, and I didn't know anyone or anything. And I just figured it out.
Yeah.
I found an acting class. I was working as a bartender, sorry. I found an acting class. And I didn't have any expectations. I didn't think I'd be a working actor. I just wanted to try it and figure out what that connection was about what I was watching and what the audience reaction was. And So, I was bartending and going to acting classes, and bit by bit, there'd be a time where I'd meet someone and I could ask them the right question, and they would tell me whatever that information was, and then I'd go seek it out. And it was really a kind of that process of observing. If I didn't understand something, asking someone, and then seeking it out myself until I found it. And then when I found the solution to that question, I would then, do that. And so that was about 8 years of that, 7 years, 8 years of that. But within that 8 years, I started to get some theater stuff. But I'm talking about off into the East River Broadway.
Way off Broadway.
Yeah, way off Broadway. Like West Beth Theater. I did something at West Beth, which was a tiny little hole in the wall theater. I mean, I did some appalling stuff, and I'm sure I was appalling, but I learned, every time. The class is great. I recommend, if you find a good class, by all means take it. But it's a greenhouse environment. You're very protected in there. I probably started actually performing too early, but I learned a lot from doing that.
Sure.
I just threw myself out into I didn't really think about, oh, this will affect my career if I'm bad. I didn't think of anything that way.
Sure.
To me, it was all an experiment. And so it really was like trial and error. I would make lots of mistakes, but I wouldn't make them again.
Sure, absolutely.
I only made them once. And, now I've got it down to the art of only making 15 mistakes a show. So,
well, listen, Florida Man is so much fun to watch. It's so bingeable. It's streaming now on Netflix, and I love Sonny Valentine and Mike Valentine. They're great together, and I love seeing where the show is going. So, Anthony, thank you so very, very much for joining us for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation at Home.
Thank you.
We are grateful, and keep on keeping on. And thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.